Okay, everyone, the clock has hit 12 in the UK, so I'm going to get started. So good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are joining us today. Welcome to the British Council Higher Education Dialogues Deep Dive. I am your host today. My name is Summer Shah. I'm the director of the British Council in Azerbaijan. I'm also the regional director of higher education of the British Council in a region we call Wider Europe. So that includes 15 countries: Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Turkey, Western Balkans, South Caucasus, and Central Asia. This is the second session of our higher education dialogue series, which we launched a month ago with an aim to bring together higher education representatives like you from all over the world so that we can look at some of the common challenges as a result of COVID-19 and share experience and look at how we can address these challenges together. It also provides an opportunity for us to enhance the connections between the UK higher education sector and this region. This event today is also part of the British Council's International Education Week, and I'm sure many of you have heard from my British Council colleagues in your country of the other events that we are organising this week, including our very first virtual Study UK Fair and the launch of our online teacher community tomorrow. Today, our session will focus on a topic that cannot be more relevant, and that is active online teaching and learning. The question we want to address together with all of you is how can teachers encourage active learning in an online delivery environment? Now, many of us have had to shift to online teaching and learning ever since the start of this pandemic, and that journey has not been smooth for everybody. From the previous higher education dialogues we organised, many of you have told us the struggles you have had in student engagement, in maintaining the quality of online delivery. And that's why we have put together the session today and invited two experts to hopefully give you some best practice and some best advice. So we will have Joe Pearson, who is the British Council's new Product Development Director in English and Exams. Joe leads a team to develop new digital language learning and assessment products for customers of all ages and stages around the world. Joe also works with a range of strategic partners to address new business opportunities. She is definitely a digital immigrant rather than a digital native, but has made peace with technology both at work and at home. Our second speaker is Dr. Kay Hack, who is the Principal Advisor Learning and Teaching for Advanced HE, and her role includes developing, managing and promoting excellence in teaching and learning, both generally and within STEM disciplines. She delivers a range of services to the higher education sector, including supporting strategic leadership and change in higher education institutions and building and maintaining strong relationships with the STEM community, government and other organizations and individuals. So between the two of them, hopefully we will give you something very tangible to allow you to take concrete actions in your working context at the end of the session. So the session will last about 90 minutes. It will be delivered in the format of a masterclass, and we want it to be as engaging as possible. So thank you to those of you who have already shared your thoughts on this session through the Padlet link we have sent to you by my British Council colleagues in your country. Throughout the session today, please feel free to use the chat function to raise any questions, share your experience and any thoughts you may have, and we will try to address as many of them as possible. Halfway through the session, we will also have a breakout room discussion led by me and some other colleagues, so make sure you join one of the breakout rooms so that you could share your experience with one another directly. Without further ado, please welcome the British Council's new Product Development Director in English and Exams, to introduce the session today, Jo Pearson.
Thank you very much, Summer, and hello everyone, wherever you are. I'm joining you from London, where this year my bedroom has become our office. It's become a teaching centre, it's become a testing centre, and many other things during the pandemic. And I'm sure that experience has been shared by many of you listening. I've worked in digital and online product development for around 20 years, and I joined the British Council to help the organisation bring more digital products and services into our overall offer. And last week I attended a global technology symposium, of course this year not in person, it was online, and it really was evident to me and all participants that COVID-19 has impacted almost all businesses across the globe this year. A session I attended examined the impact on the higher education sector specifically. Now, the expert technology analyst demonstrated that higher ed has significantly transformed to digital and online models, both in terms of business models, so that is serving customers and externally facing, and in terms of internal process. What's interesting is that higher ed is one of the most significantly changed sectors this year in business, a little way behind banking and finance, but a long way ahead of the average, and sectors such as oil and gas, for example. And I guess the fact that we're all here today confirms the data set that the analyst was presenting. The analyst further observed that higher education institutions were commonly encountering the same 5 phases in their transition from analog to online models. So in the very early stages, institutions are exploring and there may be migrating activity online. In middle phases, they go on to optimize services and maybe to differentiate those services from their analog models or from competitors. And in the mature phases, some businesses have transformed completely into completely new entities with completely new business models and processes internally. So where are we at the British Council? I think 2020 has seen a lot of our previously analog businesses also working through these transformation stages, a little bit like the stages of grief, I suppose, or change management. It's been exhausting and extremely challenging for us as well, particularly because we're a global organisation. We have offices and teaching centres all around the world, across all continents. At the same time, it's been fun and inspiring for colleagues and students alike, and we've really noticed that we've had to work together across previous business and functional silos to pull together towards a digital and online future. So to give you some examples, between March and June of this year, our teaching business moved almost entirely online. Teaching centres had to close across the world, and we managed to move around 75,000 students of all ages and learning motivations online. We had been in the explore phase of transformation. However, we had to accelerate to migration in just a couple of weeks. So this required us to do lots of different things in a very short period of time. We had to pick a platform to function globally. We had to implement new payment processes, for example. We had to reinvent our curriculum, and we decided to use a flipped classroom approach, which served online learning better. We had to train teachers to use platforms and new materials. We decided to reduce class size to optimize learning outcomes, and we had to onboard students quickly, and lots more things I don't need to tell you. I imagine you've all been through similar experiences this year. The challenges kept coming, and they continue to keep popping up. I was dealing with something rather problematic this morning. However, I'm pleased to say that we managed to keep between 60 to 70% of our students online. And I've been telling people this year, considering we sold our students and customers beef, but actually we served them fish, this is a pretty good retention rate, and we're quite pleased with our success this year. We've also been using this year to learn. We've been collecting insights through monitoring and evaluation. And I would say that we're now in the optimization phase and maybe even differentiation phase of transformation, alluding to the model I described earlier. Our students have returned some favorable opinions on the online experience, and a significant proportion of adult learners enjoy the convenience and increased flexibility we now offer. And we're now beginning to use some of our experiences to improve our services. So to take one example, we're exploiting our global presence. So that is the fact that we have teaching offers in different countries to mix classes of students with other nationalities. Our customers have told us that this is very exciting and highly conducive to drive their motivation and engagement. We're also adapting some of our curriculum further to exploit these new mixed classes. I suppose what I'm saying here in summary is that we're getting excited about online models of education and beginning to exploit technology to provide new learning experiences. And as an organisation, rather than viewing online as somehow inferior to face-to-face learning, we're embracing a lot of the different opportunities it provides to us as educators. We recognise that in some cases, it can provide an authentic model of how people now work and collaborate across dispersed locations in the 21st century, and that serves our students in readying them for their working lives and careers. So I hope that gives you a small flavour of how the British Council have been grappling with very similar challenges to all of you in the last months. Basically, we're all in this together. And all of us are seeking easily implementable solutions to our transformation into online education providers. And I'm delighted to be participating in this masterclass today. Dr. Kay Hack, as Summer said, is Principal Advisor at Advance HE, and she will be working with you to introduce some highly practical approaches for teaching and learning online. We're sure that you'll walk away with some tips and techniques that you can implement immediately. The session's interactive, so please get involved. And I'm delighted to hand over to Kay. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joanna. That's a lovely introduction. I'm just going to start off sharing my slide deck, so hopefully everybody can see that, and if you can't, pop it into the chat room. So yeah, my name's Kay Hack. I work with Advance HE. We work across, we're a global organisation, and I personally have worked in Kazakhstan and Turkey, so it's lovely to see some colleagues from those countries here with us today. And as an organisation, I think we've also worked in Georgia and Azerbaijan. Today is very much a race through some ideas. We've got fairly short amount of time, but I understand that the slide deck and the report and all the resources coming out of today will be shared with you, so you can kind of reflect back on some of those and follow up with me afterwards. So I think if you please say hello in the chat box and let us know where you're joining us from. You've heard welcomes and introductions from Joanna, myself, and Summer, and it's just great to have a feel for where everybody's coming from. So please just add your name and your institution or country into the chat box, so we can get a real flavour of the diversity of people that are joining us today. So what do we hope to achieve today? Well, the overall aim is to provide an introduction to good pedagogic teaching and learning practice in the online space, which is, a fairly sort of broad challenge. How we're going to achieve that is by really thinking about what it is that we want to achieve in our online delivery. So it's only by kind of bringing those ideas into your own practice you can think about what it is that you want to achieve and what things are going to be useful in helping you do that. I'm going to sort of demonstrate what I call high impact online practices. Yeah, so these are just really some ideas and some things to think about. And hopefully if we have time, we'll perhaps identify some principles for online teaching and learning at the end. And these are really things, so as we keep going forward in this evolving space, you can have some principles for you to sort of fall back on and think, well, actually, is this achieving what I want to achieve? Is it worth me investing time and energy into getting this resource up and running, for example? So we'll start off with a bit of a poll, and I think Summer's ready to launch a poll question, our first bit of interactivity. So how are we all feeling today? Are we all feeling on top of the world? I apologize in advance for lots of the cycling metaphors here today, but are we all feeling on top of the world? Are we feeling that we're working incredibly hard, but we're not really getting the results or having the impact that we want? Or do we feel like this poor fellow, that we're making progress, we're flying along, but you're not sure that you're doing it right, let's say. So Summer, if you can launch the poll.
Yeah, the poll is now in the conversation or the chat room. So if everybody could go there, and you may need to scroll up or down a little bit to see the poll, and then please click on your choice and submit the poll, and we'll see the results.
Summer, do I need to hide my screen for that to appear for everybody, or will they just see the result in the chat?
Yeah, I don't think you need to hide your screen, Kay. So everybody, if you haven't seen that, if you click on conversation on top of the screen, which is next to the participants icon, which is like a little notebook, and it says show conversation. If you go in there, and then you will be able to see the poll, and then we should be able to see your answers.
Oh yeah, I've got them there.
Yeah,
starting to build up. Quite a mixed response, shall we say?
yeah. So Kay, at the moment we're seeing quite almost an even spread. So about 30% of us are on top of the world. Half of us are working hard, but not getting the results we want. And then a smaller percentage, about 20%, we're making progress, but not sure if we're doing it right.
Yeah. And I think that really represents what you know, the spectrum of views. You know, I've been talking to people all around the world over the last 6 months, and that's kind of pretty much is a similar message that I'm getting. And I think that the problem is, you know, summed up by what Joanna said in her introduction, and also I think by this image that we're trying to fix the bike while we're still, you know, trying to reach the finish line, and it, you know, and that obviously throws up lots of challenges for us. Just a little bit more about the chat box as we go through. I'm not here today to demonstrate the technology, show you how to do things. There's just really not enough time and space to do that. It's very much more intended as a conversation, and as I said at the start, to promote reflection. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I think for the British Council, we've got a lot of people joining us today, which is fantastic. So it does mean that you know, I won't be able to communicate very well individually with you all, but please put questions into the chat box, as Summer said. Try to focus on what I'm saying and don't get drawn off into conversations that aren't relevant, which is very easy to do, I know, in these chat box. But if you've got questions that can't be answered by the facilitators, I will try and have a look through those in the breakout space. Okay. So this slide here really, I think, sums up my philosophy when I'm designing online teaching or any kind of teaching, and that is that form must follow function. I think, you know, we're all familiar, and you know, you can go into any search engine and you can find thousands and thousands of apps for different things and people using different ways of teaching. so basically there's going to be an app for everything, whatever it is you want to do. But so is why it's really important to decide what it is you want to achieve, what it is your students need to learn, and then find the right tool that can allow you to achieve that in an online environment. So form must follow function. Okay, so a bit of thinking. How do we learn? We're talking about the switch to online learning, but it's really useful just to start off thinking, well, how do we learn anyway? Before we try to think about how we learn through digital media. And actually, I know one of my colleagues has joined us from Kazakhstan. Hello, Ajan. I think I think both those photographs are from Nazarbayev University. So we learn through discussing ideas with colleagues. We might learn through exploring ideas through graphical means or through play, building, discussing, classifying information. We can think back to our childhood and learn through much more sort of creative and playful learning. We learn through experiencing things. So we learn in a huge variety of ways. And what I would like you to do now, and this is sort of quite nice for an online environment, is, perhaps kind of start thinking. You can close your eyes. I'm going to give you a minute's thinking time. And what I want you to do is just try to reflect back on what was your best ever learning experience. And you can think about who, what, the location, what was happening, what was it that made it the best. So I'm literally going to time you for a minute. You can close your eyes, and then once we'll share some ideas. Okay, time is up. And what I'd like you to do now is just thinking about that learning experience. Just pop something in the chat box. What was your best learning experience? Okay, are we seeing anything appearing in the chat box now? So just share a few words about what was your best learning experience in the chat box there. Lovely. So we're starting to see some ideas coming through. Hands-on in a relaxed atmosphere. Yeah. Discussing ideas, yeah, fantastic, with instructor and friends, yeah, so that kind of social part of the learning through questions and answers, being able to pose questions and getting meaningful answers. Yeah, we're going to be coming to that. Yes, knowledgeable teachers, good resources, time for self-study, absolutely, collaboration, supportive faculty, continuous feedback. Yeah, chatting and sharing experience, that's social. Problem-based learning, fantastic. case studies, right? We're getting some really lovely ideas coming through. Yeah, where we really get to the heart of what's a really difficult ideas. And I think that's one of the things that we talk about, sort of transformation in learning, where you kind of actually start to grasp some difficult ideas. Oh, they're coming in far too fast for me to keep up with them now, but keep adding your ideas to them, because I think we'll have a look through those at the end. Simulations, another great one. Yeah, the one just flicked by, but it was about kind of the student led, so it was kind of in the topic and then presenting. Yeah, a range of tasks and activities. Gamification, one of my favorites. Yep. Okay, well, please carry on putting those through there, because I think Simon will capture those at the end. All of your ideas really capture hopefully what I've thought about in the next few slides. Most of that learning that you talk about there, those best learning experiences, involve some kind of doing. There has to be some kind of activity in order for you to learn. And I certainly picked up on a couple there. There was time to make sense, time and space to make sense of what you're learning. And feedback, also saw that one in the chat room. Learners need formal and informal feedback to reassure them, to direct them, to scaffold in terms of what they've learned. And then we also had in the chat box discussing. So you need opportunities to express what you've learned in your own words. And that really is the only way that you can, tell yourself whether you've learned something, or hear your students and understand that they've learned something, by giving them that opportunity to verbalize, to speak back to you in terms of their own words, or write, or what have you. We didn't see too much about assessment, but of course assessment sets the hidden curriculum and focuses learners on what they need to learn. But I think just by looking at your learning experiences, what we do know, and we try to avoid, is that we don't need assessment in order to learn. Assessment has another purpose, but we're going to ignore assessment today, so that's for another masterclass. Those ideas form part of this model developed by Professor Philip Race, who's a chemistry lecturer, professor in the UK higher education sector, and he kind of developed this ripples model. And the idea of the ripples is that all of these things interact. You don't do them sequentially, they all kind of buffer into each other. But the heart of this ripples model is that students either need to learn something, or they want to learn something. So we always learn something if we're really passionate about it, and sometimes we learn something because, yes, We've obviously all learned a lot, and that sort of, I suppose, shows us one thing about learning, is that we're, when we have to learn something, we do learn it, but we might not be doing it the best possible way. So what I'm going to think about now is really some kind of, well, first of all, what do we actually mean by online teaching? And I think certainly in the conversation in our room, it encompasses so many different ideas. So from how we get students to start by sort of pre-thinking, preparing for our online or synchronous online when we're all together in the room. So what do we get them to do beforehand to prepare for their learning? How do we make the best use of our time? And it was certainly picked up in the room I was in. It was like, I feel like I'm doing a lot of stuff, and it's taking an awful lot of time. So what do you really want to do when you have that opportunity to interact with the students, and they can interact with each other? And then, following that, how do you encourage your students to carry on interacting with each other or working independently, asynchronously, i.e. when you're not there with them, but getting them to do that independent work, and then all coming back again to do some feedbacking and sense checking. So online learning, and I know this is kind of fairly self-explanatory, but it encompasses all of those steps, and it's really important to break down what it is that you're teaching and thinking about which of those boxes it fits into best. So what I'm going to rattle through now, and I realize, as always with these things, we can never quite squeeze in as much as we want, but 7 high impact, what I'm calling high impact online practices, so HIOP, and you'll see that little hashtag over the next few slides. And what I'm going to do is go through these ideas, and I want you to think about those and think about how you can connect them to your own practice, and hopefully take forward the ones that you think are going to be most useful for you. So the first one is about retrieval practices, okay? And it's really important. We kind of talked about knowledge not being the most important thing in our teaching. We're not about teaching knowledge anymore, but students need to be able to retain information. And I'm sure well, maybe you guys aren't as old as me, but as a child I could remember loads of different telephone numbers, but now I don't know any, because I don't practice retrieving any of that information anymore. But how do we actually practice and encourage students to retrieve the information that they actually need? How do we support students to do that in our teaching? And do we encourage it individually, or can they do it collectively? So when we think about retrieval practices and supporting those in our teaching, and thinking back to the whole online experience, in terms of preparation, we can get students to do some diagnostic exercises, so little tests within virtual learning environments or other platforms to make sure, are they recalling stuff from the previous course or the previous year or from last week? So just a little check at the start to find out where they're at. And then in terms of the synchronous part, how are we getting students to make notes that actually help them recall information? So mind maps and visual note taking I'm going to show in a moment, but of course we're all familiar with doing some very quick quizzes with things like Kahoot, and they're a great, either at the beginning of a class or the middle of a class, just to kind of practice and get used to that idea of retaining knowledge. When in terms of independent learning, or we can provide our students with some self-tests so they can actually test their own knowledge. And one of my kind of favorite ones, I think, is getting students to create their own review questions. So they've done the learning with you, you've sent them away to do some homeworks, and then you're meeting them again the following week. But you start off that session having asked them, to already prepare a list of questions of things they don't understand. And one of the things that I do prefer about online teaching is that you can do that all electronically. So get them to collate or collaborate on a list of review questions, you know, using a collaborative document like Google Docs. And so they can do that anonymously, because I'm sure you, like me, have had that experience at the start of class. We go, okay, what didn't we understand from last week? What would you like me to go over again? And there's just silence. You know, students don't want to put up their hand and say, oh, you know, I didn't understand something. So by creating an you know, anonymous document like that, they can start to really put down the questions of the things that they're struggling with. So I said I'd come back to this idea of visual note taking, and this is where you use drawings or graphic organizers to support learning. And you can hopefully just see that little image there. I was on a course myself last week, which was about finance and governance in higher education. And I was learning for 5 hours in the day. And I'm sure you can appreciate, I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to stay focused? So I thought I would try visual note taking or drawing and doodling. And I always recommend this, but very rarely try it myself. So I thought, well, I'll practice what I preach and actually try doodling and drawing around my notes and seeing if that helps me stay engaged and help me connect the information. So as you can see from that, my drawing is awful, but the idea then is that you don't have to be a great drawer to do this. So I'm going to try and encourage you to do that for the rest of the session. So we'll come back to that. The other idea is creating mind maps, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But when I share some ideas with you, the rest of these high impact online practices, can you connect those to what you're already doing in your practice? When you hear those ideas, you think, actually, yeah, I'm already doing that, and think about, is it working for you? Or think about something that you used to do in the classroom and think about, how do I do that now online? So mind mapping what I'm saying and connecting that back to your own knowledge. And then the last one is you know, how we're classifying information. So some kind of graphic organizer, and this one is called a Diamond 9, where you kind of classify things as the most important. So you might want to, as I go through these 7 practices, think, oh, this is the one I really want to try now. These are the ones I want to try next semester. You know, so you can just start to classify the ideas as I give them to you and think about how you might use them. So 3 different ways of taking notes, and what we're going to do is a little experiment. Okay, so just to keep you all engaged, over the next 15 minutes, I think I'm going to demonstrate 7 of these practices, and you'll see that I've highlighted them on each slide with a hashtag. And I want you all to try one of those approaches, either using doodles or drawings, some kind of graphic organizer or a mind map, or just do notes. Okay, and I'd like you to pop into the chat box which one of those you'd like to try, and please somebody try A and B, A or B. This is nobody's going to ask you to share your drawings at the end, don't worry, but I just think it'd be really fun to see if one of these tools helps you stay engaged, listening to what I'm saying, helps you connect what I'm saying to your own experiences. So anybody being brave and putting in the chat box that they're going to try one of those. Let me see. Anybody want to put up, they want to try a A or a B? Oh, perfect, lovely. Oh, you don't see the slides changing. Anybody else having that problem? Do you still see the slides changing?
Yeah, I have seen the slides changing. I mean, at the moment we are on this slide because you're explaining the experiment. So I think we're probably okay. Yeah, we can see the slide 2 now on signposting.
Okay, great. I think there's maybe just a little bit of delay. That's probably why she said. So lovely. Thank you very much for everybody just putting A, B or C in there. Have a go at that. We're going to have a little quiz at the end. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. And this is really for my own benefit of finding out whether these things really work. So let's try it. Okay, so high impact practice number 2, signposting. And this comes really, you know, I'm not sharing the feedback today because we don't have time, but feedback from students saying, right, you know, they're overwhelmed with information. They've really no idea what are the things that they absolutely need, you know, what are the nice to know stuff, you know, what's the extra stuff, you know, and so much information being provided to them. And I think if we oops. You know, think back to my slide that I had at the beginning. You know, in order to allow students to explore the much more rich content that's available to them, it's important that they're signposted so that they don't just get lost in that wood, essentially. So we need to signpost students to really good quality resources, really good content, but also, you know, give them a pathway through and say, well, this is you know, absolutely critical that you need to know this stuff or need to be able to do this stuff. I think I wrote a blog post right at the start of lockdown, and I think one of the things I reflected on then, and I'm sure you all realise it now, is that we haven't all been gifted with more time, certainly since lockdown. So how can we maximise the use of both our time and our students' turn to maximise their learning? So that's high impact online practice number 2, signposting. Number 3 is about having rich discussions. And again, I think this is something that's come up both in our breakout room and in the how do we learn question at the start. We need to have rich conversations. And these little icons here, you know, the top right hand one, encouraging students to research and find out about specific bits of knowledge which they can bring together in order to get a bigger idea of the whole. And I think that idea certainly came up in the chat box at the start. Having students or others explain ideas to somebody else that doesn't understand it, and by doing that activity, you can really develop the learning of both, and providing space and opportunities for students to ask questions about things that they don't understand, and facilitating that in an inclusive way. So high impact online practices number 3, having rich discussions. Number 4, transforming passive viewing to active engagements. I'm sure a lot of us are sharing videos, whether they're our own created screencasts with our students, or whether they're TED Talks or other online videos that we can find readily available. But we also have this kind of concern that the students kind of start playing it. You know, there's a 20-minute video of you delivering content. I know Joe talked about flipped content at the start. So we're hoping for students to look at that material prior to class, so that we can then use our interactive time for some engaging discussions. But you know, the student switches it on and maybe sleeps through it. So how can we have more engagement with video, etc. So lots of ways and tips, and it depends whether you're doing it synchronously or asynchronously, but and obviously on the content, but freeze framing the video, asking them to what would happen next, turning the sound off and asking students to write the commentary, or the sound only, create the visuals, and just as a prompt or a trigger for a role play or a simulation. So if you're asking the students to watch a video and say, right, okay, when we come together, we're going to create an interview with this character or that character. So they realize that, you know, if they haven't watched the video, they're going to miss out on the next learning experience. You know, if it's a certain point of view that's being presented in the video, can they create the opposing viewpoint, or what is the evidence either for or against that position? And then just as a more general trigger for problem-based learning. So lots of ways that we can really engage students with video content. If you've got virtual learning environments, a lot of these tools and questions, if you embed, they're all done in very different ways, so I can't really explain for your own virtual learning environment, but if you embed the video within a discussion, you can then kind of prompt some of these questions afterwards, and of course you can just use a short stimulating video at the start of a session. Although again, if it's a completely online session, it can be really challenging to do that one. So number 4 then, let's really get our students to engage with video content. Number 5, gamification and game-based learning. Just pop in the chat box there. What was your favorite game? I love this, especially with international audiences, because I get to hear about lots of different games that I've never heard of. So okay, so we're having some stuff that we do games with students. What about games that you did from a kid? Okay, Bamboozle, I'm guessing that's a family game. So let's think about games that we played maybe as children. Maybe we still are. Lego, and one of my favorites, lovely. Jeopardy, yes. Perfect. Yeah, so lots of different games that we enjoyed as kids. Matching games, yeah. Guessing, yeah. Monopoly, yeah, fantastic. And I think what we can see, you know, when we look at those games is a lot of the ideas and the learning that goes on there we can transform into a higher education space. So what do we mean when we're talking about gamification of learning? So it's the kind of application of game design or game mechanics to non-game contexts. And really, it's to encourage specific behaviours and engagement. So I'm sure you all have loyalty cards for supermarkets, and you can get points. And basically, all of those businesses are sort of gamifying their selling to us. So we're being encouraged to do certain activities, buy certain products, use certain services by kind of getting points or what have you. And we can do the same in our teaching. So you might want to encourage questions. So you'll give teams points for things like that. Set up leaderboards. Lots of ways to do that, just to really encourage the type of behaviours that you want. Submitting homeworks, attending guest lectures. Activities that perhaps students are a little bit reluctant to do, but tend to enjoy once they actually participate. So thinking about how you want to influence their behaviour and engagement. But it can also be about sort of creating sort of some specific games. Where you create a game which is maybe a modified version of Monopoly, maybe a modified version of Scrabble for language learning, where you're actually teaching students something that's very relevant to their learning. And one of my favorite ones of the moment is, and increasingly popular, is the escape room approach. So these are very popular for everybody. I'm sure many of you have experienced them. But there's a series of puzzles that you have to solve in order to unlock the box. So I used to have great fun doing this in face-to-face teaching, but you can also do it using Google Forms or Google Slides, where you have to get an answer right before it will scroll on to the next page. Google Slides is a great way of doing it collaboratively. The students have editorial control of the slides, and they have to be able to solve the question to get to the next point. So I'm sure if you Google that, you can find lots of resources that can help you set that up, but definitely an engaging way of gamifying learning. Okay, number 6, we're nearly there. I hope we're doing well on our recall here, is narrative approaches. We all know that stories help us recall information. We can recall stories a lot easier than any other sort of information. It's just the way our brains work allows us to connect information. So developing narrative pedagogy, first of all, can be a very reflective experience, so encouraging both teachers and students to share stories and interpret experiences. But alternatively, you can situate learners within a story environment, and there's lots of course different ways of doing that in terms of virtual and augmented reality, role play, simulation. So one of my favorite resources for this, or showing this, is this sort of digital narrative project from London School of Economics. And here students created their own stories, their own storyboards, their sort of digital videos of a concept or an idea that they wanted to share with others.